All right. Well, folks, we left off on page 4 of the Angel of the Lord / Yahweh section that we are on. And we are going to Genesis 31, verse 11. All right. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. And I said, Here I am. And he said, Lift up your eyes and see all the goats that make with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. So here we have the angel of God. And so far in the story, he is just the angel of God. And he is not God. But then in verse 13, he continues speaking and throws us for a loop. This is what he says. He says, I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred. He doesn't say, Thus saith the Lord, the God of Bethel. He doesn't say the Lord, the God of Bethel. He says, I am the God of Bethel. Here, for me, this is even stronger language than what we have seen so far, because the angel is straight up saying to everyone, or to Jacob, I am God. And in Genesis 28, we get the story of Bethel. So let's turn to Genesis 28 so we can see what the angel of the Lord is talking about. Would someone like to read verses 12 and 13 of chapter 28?
I will. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land in which you are lying.
Mm-hmm. So here, it says, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, the God of your ancestors, the God of Isaac. And the angel of the Lord in Genesis 31 is saying, that person you spoke to, that is me. I am the God of Bethel. So that's very interesting language for the angel of the Lord to use. It seems pretty clear what he is saying. So for me, I don't know what else to do but to acknowledge that in some sense, I don't know what sense yet, but the angel of God is Yahweh. But in another sense, the angel of God speaks as if Yahweh is an other. So in some sense, he is Yahweh. In some sense, he is not Yahweh. And how would that even work without our Trinitarian language?
Well, I was just going to say, doesn't this solidify that God, the Trinity of God?
So for me, I think so. But if I am not a Trinitarian, it just is very confusing. Mm-hmm. If I was a monotheist, it would be very confusing. A strict monotheist, the way that Israel is, where there's just one God, one being, one person, this is kind of confusing. But for us, Jesus says similar language. I am the Father, but the Father, or he is not the Father, but Jesus is God. He's also not the Father. And so for me, I think what hinders our looking back at the Old Testament is that we only get the Lord or God. We don't get Trinitarian language in the Old Testament. And so often because of that, we have ingrained ourselves to only think of God the Father as the only one that shows up in the Old Testament. We don't leave room for the possibility of the pre-incarnate word showing up. We leave room for the Spirit, but the Spirit's always addressed as the Spirit of the Lord is upon me or something like that. Whereas with God, it's only Yahweh. And so we think of it only as mainly God the Father showing up whenever we see Yahweh or angel of the Lord. We tend to think angel because it's just angels in the name. And we'll get to the Christophanies where it's like we have to remember that God is three persons, even in the Old Testament. The God of the Old Testament is still a three-person deity. So let's look at Genesis 48. This is Jacob now blessing his children. Can someone read 13 through 16? Where he says, bless the boys, read up to there. This is a very interesting passage. And I'll be honest, all these passages I have overlooked my whole life, but we'll just 48, 13 through 16. It says, and Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand. And he brought them near him, and Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, this is the interesting portion, the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys. And that's interesting, isn't it? He says, God who is this person, God who is this person, God who is this person, and then the angel who is this person, and then singular, bless the boy. How is the angel able to bless the boys? The blessing is coming from God, who is also the angel who redeemed me. Because who's the only person who can redeem people but God? And you can say maybe God's just doing it through the angel, but for me, the issue that arises is that it doesn't let the text say what it's saying. We have to then add words like the angel through whom God will make these blessings happen. But the text just says the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys. So why would this make sense? Why would the angel be able to bless the boys? Well, it makes sense when we think of the angel revealing himself to be the God of Bethel. If the angel is the God of Bethel, then it makes sense the angel would be able to bless him, because the angel, the God of Bethel, is the one who said, the land on which you lie, I will give to you and to your offspring. He's the one that is blessing his children from generation to generation. So now let's go to a familiar. Do you have any questions?
It's interesting. I don't know if y'all noticed it or not, but did you hear how his daddy switched his hands?
Yeah.
The firstborn didn't get the right hand.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So let's go to a familiar passage, to the burning bush, Exodus chapter 3. Would someone like to read verses 1 and 2 and 3?
I'll read it. Now
Actually,
Moses,
1 through 6.
now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.
All right, so who appears to him in the burning bush?
God.
God does, but what does the Bible say first?
Angel of the Lord.
The angel of the Lord appears to him in the bush and calls out. But after the angel of the Lord calls out, now who speaks? As you said, God is speaking. The Lord is speaking and saying to him, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so we have again this conversation in the Bible where the angel of the Lord shows up, and it's also telling us that God has showed up. And so now when the angel of the Lord says, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it kind of makes sense because the groundwork has been laid in the book of Genesis for this concept, the concept that the angel of the Lord can also be God. And so why else do we think it's God? Well, because take off your sandals, so the place you stand on is holy ground. Holy ground is where God is as well. And so we can say maybe the angel of the Lord is the one that appeared, but God is speaking through the angel, but that's not how the story unfolds, and it's talked about to us and it's told to us. So it's very interesting. Stories that we know, but as we go through the study, it's interesting who appears and who is talking. And so in the burning bush now, we have the angel of the Lord appears, and then Yahweh speaks. And so it's almost as if, again, the angel is speaking as if he is Yahweh himself. Then it goes, and Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. The only thing that we know that Moses can see is the fire. And who has appeared in the fire? The angel of the Lord has appeared in the burning bush. And now it's saying that Moses doesn't want to look at the burning bush because who is there? Because God is there. And what happens when you look at God? You die. If you see God face to face, you die. So we have in the scriptures the identity of the angel of the Lord and Yahweh kind of being merged together in some sense. Then in verse 7, it says, Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So it's God who is speaking here. And in verse 11, Moses says to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, But I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. And this is interesting because now we have God referring to God in the third person, which is kind of confusing. Then we have verse 13. Then Moses said to God, If I come to the people of Israel and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. And so we want to remember these things because we will come back to this story a little later from a different book of the Bible. Verse 15, God also said to Moses, Say this to the people of Israel, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you and what has been done to you in Egypt. So I have a question. Why does verse 2 say the angel of the Lord appears to him? And then in verse 16, he is told to tell them that God has appeared to them.
To make the point. I'm not sending a messenger, I am who I am. I'm the real thing.
Mhm.
Is that what you're asking?
I mean, that is true, but what I'm asking is kind of on the lines of it's showing that Yahweh and the angel can be synonymous at times. And this is God now speaking, saying, I have appeared to you. And the Bible also telling us the one who has actually appeared in verse 2 that we're told of is the angel of the Lord.
Do the Jewish people believe in angels?
Yes.
Okay, because he's really talking to the Jewish people, so I'm trying to equate that to what their belief was at that time, and why God has to go to such lengths to say, I'm not an angel, but I am an angel, but when I say something, it's God talking. Does that make sense what
Well,
I'm saying?
because the interesting thing is when the angel of the Lord that shows up in scripture, it doesn't always equate to saying, I am God. But we're looking at the scriptures that say the angel of the Lord and God can be synonymous. So whenever you see the angel of the Lord appear in the scriptures, you have to think to yourself, is this just an ordinary angel at this point, or is this Christ showing up as the angel of the Lord? And we do that by looking at the text as we are now. So the text is saying, the angel of the Lord appeared, and then God appeared to him, and that's the same story. Then we can think to ourselves, hey, this may be a showing up of Jesus in the Old Testament, which is what we are working on in this study, trying to be able to see where Jesus appears in the Old Testament. Sometimes it's through types, as we've talked about, and now we're just looking at the way the Bible subtly gives us hints at things, but it's not always easy to see them at first. With the angel of the Lord being a type of Christ, or being the angel, not a type, but a pre-incarnate word showing up potentially, especially in these ones that we're looking at. And so it'll be hard, and that's what we talked about last week about how there were Jewish people who believed, because this is so confusing, that God was maybe two different beings, that there was God, the angel of the Lord, and God Yahweh, that there are two different beings, one God. And then when Jesus shows up 200 years later, the church is proclaiming the Trinity, and the Jewish followers are saying, if you can't believe there are two different beings, that this angel of the Lord is God anymore, because that's a heresy now. And so we have evidence for this being very confusing for them too, because of these stories here and how they unfold, because this is the only witness we have, and we have to let the text speak for itself. And so it's hard when you come at, you talk about how do the Jewish people view these things. Well, for them, it was very confusing, and they don't have the same language that we do. And so one of the things we had talked about earlier on was how so many things in scripture make no sense until Jesus shows up in the New Testament. So many things are just veiled until Jesus shows up, and we see, the reason why we can say maybe this is Jesus showing up, pre-incarnate word, is because it's the same kind of language that Jesus uses of himself. Jesus describes himself as God, but I'm not the Father. The angel describes himself as God, but I'm not Yahweh. You get what I'm saying? And so without the Jesus part, it's hard to look back and say, right off the bat, I can fully understand this. So my argument would be that this thing is veiled until Jesus comes. And once Jesus comes, it's easier to see it, like with many things in the Old Testament. Like with the story of the bronze serpents. Like, why is that in there? Well, until Jesus comes and proclaims himself to have to die like the bronze, be lifted up like the bronze serpent, it makes sense why that story is now in there. Why does Melchizedek show up in the book of Genesis? It makes no sense. It's like this man shows up for like 4 verses, but yet the whole New Testament has a huge theology based off of Melchizedek about who Jesus is. And so Melchizedek doesn't make sense until we get Jesus as well. So it's very interesting how Jesus unlocks so many things. And when we get to the next section, we'll talk about that even more, how Jesus is just, what's the word? And we'll talk about explanatory scope and how Jesus is just the answer to so many questions in the Old Testament. So let's go now and see, how does the New Testament treat this story? So in the New Testament, do you recall anyone who speaks about the whole overarching theme of the Bible, trying to talk to the Jewish people who isn't Jesus?
No.
Well, it says here, Stephen.
Stephen, the martyr. When he is on trial, he goes through the whole Bible, telling them, kind of like how Jesus does on the road to Emmaus, he does to everyone. And so Acts 7, he's speaking to the Israelites, he's about to be stoned, and he says this: "Now when 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai, in a flame of fire in a bush. When Moses saw it, he was amazed at the sight, and as he drew near to look, there came the voice of the Lord." So it's interesting that we have hundreds of years later, Stephen kind of is approaching this topic in a delicate manner as well. He's trying to let the text speak for itself. He says, Moses saw an angel of the Lord that appeared, but the Lord spoke. So that's even how Stephen understands the story, that there's 2 different beings, but they're kind of mingled into one, meshed into one, and it's kind of confusing for everyone, and yet he just lets it speak for itself. He's preserving the complexity of the text. So if the angel of the Lord is not in fact God in the burning bush passage, I don't know what function he serves or why he's brought up at all. For me, I think all these texts point to the angel of the Lord being someone who is able to proclaim himself to be God, but also able to proclaim himself to be other than Yahweh. And for me, that's Jesus, because in the Old Testament, we already have the Spirit functions as the Spirit does already, and is attested to. So let's get to Exodus 23. Remember what God said? God said, "I will be with you." Well, in Exodus 23:20, it says, "Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Pay careful attention to him and obey his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him." My name is in the angel of the Lord. And that's a profound thing to say, for God to say my name is in him. Remember, names are not just titles, they are more than that to God. And so it's interesting that we can say, maybe this itself would mean the angel is God, because who is God going to share his name with, or put his name in, if not anyone other than himself? And that may be the case, but I will also say this in John 17:6, Jesus says, "I have manifested your name to the people you gave me out of the world." I have manifested your name. Your name is in me. I have manifested your name. And so we have this conversation with Jesus, and we're like, Jesus, you manifested their name? Well, in the Old Testament, we now have the angel who is sent before them. God's name will be in him. And so now we have another correlation between the angel of the Lord and Jesus in the New Testament.
Right, I mean, it's like, you could read it, "Behold, I send Jesus before you.
You could.
And give heed to him and hearken to his voice, do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him." So, I mean, you could replace the word angel with Jesus.
So for me, this is kind of the biggest case for the angel of the Lord in these appearances to be the second person of the Trinity, for me. Now, not for everyone, not everyone agrees, and you don't all have to agree with me. And if you don't, you're more than welcome to. And if you want to share why as well, that's great too. This is a place to learn and grow. But I'm just expressing my thoughts and my beliefs at this time. Okay, we talked about this already. Okay, yeah, so I think one of the things that we are going to continue learning is that our New Testament faith is very much built in the Old Testament. As Christians, we don't fully appreciate how Old Testament our faith really is. That a lot of the New Testament theology and belief about Jesus is all built on the Old Testament. And so if we don't understand the Old Testament, it's hard for us to understand where the New Testament writers are coming from. Let's go to Judges chapter 2 to see the fulfillment of God's promise of an angel being sent before them. So if you are unaware of Judges chapter 2, they are about to, well, I'll just let it speak first. It says, now the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim, and the angel of the Lord said, I brought you. So let's get this. He is actually traveling from one city to another and is proclaiming the message as he goes. So now the angel of the Lord has traveled from Gilgal to Bochim and says, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you into the land that I swore to give your fathers. But who swore to give the land to Abraham? God. But the angel is also saying, I swore to give you the land, and I brought you up, and I led you up out from Egypt. So it continues. It says, I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. So who has made all these covenants in the Old Testament? God has. God has made the covenants with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God makes the covenant with David. And he is saying, I, the angel of the Lord, I made those covenants with you. All right. So let's flash back to Exodus 23:21. And God says, let's pay careful attention to him and obey his voice. And then here it says, you have not obeyed my voice. How wild is that? God tells them, obey the voice of the angel of the Lord. And here he's saying, you have not. You have not obeyed my voice. He's speaking as if he is God, and yet he is the angel. He says, you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You shall break down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice. So for me, as we put all these texts together, it makes sense that this could be a preview or prefiguring of the plurality of God, meaning a prefiguring of the Trinity, of God being not just one person, but multiple persons. It's kind of the Old Testament lays the groundwork for the New Testament theology of the Trinity. All right. I think we
Could it be that when they saw that, when people in the Old Testament saw angels, that it was because they could not look on God without dying, but they could see an angel?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because who also is God that people can see?
Jesus.
Jesus. And here we have God that people can see. And maybe, I don't know. But God normally shows, remember angels, the word for angel just means messengers too. The angels are God's messengers. so it could be that God would send an angel as a messenger, because God can't just show up like that. Remember, whenever God shows up in the Old Testament, there's only one place he walks past. That's when Moses in the cup of the rock. Every other place, it's like the glory of God shows up.
Well, I mean,
The glory of God shows up as like the fire or the pillars of pillar of fire and the, what's the other one in the morning? The cloud, there we go. The cloud and the fire, and then the cloud and the glory in the temple. And so God doesn't ever physically show up except for two places. We have Genesis in the Garden of Eden, but then with Moses, that Yahweh shows. So, yeah. But we'll get to the Garden of Eden story as well, about maybe that separate stuff. So, all right, so let's go. I think we've kind of this. Where I want to go to. We have to do that one. If you want, we can go through all these other ones if you want, but they're kind of just like hammering the point home. We can. Let's go to the second to last, the third to last page, and the one that will start with Judges chapter 13. We're not in that one yet, Michael. Do y'all know where we're at? Y'all see that?
It's on the left-hand side.
On the left-hand side, you'll see,
Let's
and let's look at another one in Judges 13. And
Yeah, I think that's yours. Those are yours. Says at the top, of me because you die.
Okay, right, that's what I was looking for.
all right. It was just fast forwarding it because this is a little bit different than the previous ones. Are just going to be very similar to what we've already done. All right, so verse 6 in Judges 13. Then the woman came and told her husband, a man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God. Very awesome. I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. But he said to me, behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come again to us and teach us what we are able to do with the child who will be born. And God listened to the voice of Manoah. And the angel of God came again to the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So far in this story, the angel of God is just an angel. But as we read on in verse 16, it says, the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, if you detain me, I will not eat of your food, but if you prepare a burnt offering and then offer it to the Lord, for Manoah did not know that he was the angel of the Lord, I want you to pay attention to one of the most interesting verses in the Old Testament. All right, verse 17. And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, what is your name, so that when your words come true, we may honor you? And the angel of the Lord said to him, why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful? That is a pretty big head scratcher. What does it even mean? It's very confusing.
My translation says, why do you ask my name? It is beyond understanding.
Mine says, what is your name, so that we may honor you when your word comes true?
This translation, I think, is more proper, and I'll show you why. The meaning of the word wonderful. What does it even, what, is it something about the quality of God's name that's wonderful? Well, in Isaiah, it says his name shall be called Wonderful, in talking about Christ.
Now, does that mean wonderful? I think a lot of the times in our current usage of the word, it means like amazing, great, super positive. But I know we also have the word wonder, and to be full of wonder can be a positive thing, but it can also be like the way this translated is beyond understanding. Like there's something curious about it or
Yes,
uncertain.
it's something, it's too great to be understood.
Mhm.
And so, yes, so yours is more of an explanation of the word, but the word, if it translated just the word, it would be wonderful.
We just don't always use it that way.
Correct. We don't in our vocabulary. So is that the NIV or NRSV?
Yeah.
NRSV does a more colloquial translation than the ESV, which is what I'm using. And so it's interesting because the Bible talks about Christ as having that name. And so I just think that's very beautiful. And it's like, it seems like a throwaway verse, but it's not. But also, they're offering a burnt offering. Who do you offer offerings to? To God. You don't offer offerings to an angel. All right. Okay. Verse 19, so Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it on the rock to the Lord, to the one who works wonders. And Manoah and his wife were watching. And when the flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord went up in the flame of the altar. Now Manoah and his wife were watching, and they fell on their faces to the ground. So let's pause here. If this is a pre-incarnate Jesus, what is the significance of ascending in this sacrifice? Right, it's through Jesus' sacrifice that he ascends into heaven in the New Testament. So the angel of the Lord appears no more to Manoah and his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife, we shall surely die. Why? We have seen God. The only reason to think that you are going to die is if you've seen God. But who did they see? The angel of the Lord. So Manoah is convinced without a shadow of a doubt, he has seen God face to face. So if we put these passages together, it becomes clear for us that the angel of the Lord is somehow God, but somehow yet different.
Who is the child of these people?
Samson. So
So is this a fourth dimension of God?
what do
Or
you mean by
still a third? I'm talking about the Trinity.
So we would say we would call this the second person, because the Father's the first person, the Son is the second person, the Spirit's the third person. So this would be a pre-incarnate Jesus, or the Word taking on a sort of flesh, but not in the way we would talk about the incarnation. You understand what I mean?
Yep.
Okay.
Just didn't know where it fit in the 3. Thinking it might be a 3.5 or a 4.
Or it could be an angel, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So I just think it's very interesting that people saying they saw God, but they're looking at the angel of the Lord. So, all right. The Bible talks about Jesus as being coming forth from forever, from of old, the Ancient of Days. And here this would make sense if he's also the pre-incarnate Word here. Before Abraham was, I am, is what Jesus says. And we know who appeared and said, I am. The angel of the Lord spoke as God. And so having that connection would make sense if Jesus was the one that appeared in the burning bush. All right, so now let's get to an objection to this. I think it's important to talk about some of the challenges. And this is an argument, but I don't see it as, it's strong in some areas, but very weak in others. So it's the Jewish principle of agency. Let me back up. The people would argue that the angel of the Lord is just a messenger speaking with the agents, with God's agency, and so we'll get to that. So they would say that the angel of the Lord is really just an occurrence of the agency of God. That if you can't see it, it's just because we're ignorant of Jewish culture. But the culture allows for agency that would make sense of how the angel Lord can speak for God as if he is God. So let me give you some examples here. Let's walk through this.
Wouldn't that be similar to like the prophets, how they have the
Yes.
agency of God to be speaking,
Mhm.
mouthpiece for God?
Yes. So the agency, the principle of agency would allow for a person to speak and sound like God, even though they are not God. And for an example, they will go to Deuteronomy where Moses is speaking, and then it's as if God is speaking. In Deuteronomy, Moses speaks, and then God, all of a sudden, it's like God speaking. And he's speaking through the agency of God. So the hard thing is that those passages are not as clear as these passages are. It may very well be the principle of agency that Moses is using. And it's unwise to argue that this principle doesn't exist. It's a real thing. It's a really good argument. But for me, I feel like those who want to use it to prove the angel of the Lord is not Jesus kind of take it out of proportion. And what I mean by that is that it seems like an abuse of the principle, because the principle is used in a legal manner where I speak on your behalf, but I don't imitate you. For example, I come to you and I say, I'm Stephen from Cross and Crown, and I'm from the 8 a.m. service, and you go, well, it's probably just agency. He is speaking as if he is Stephen. He's not actually Stephen. And I go, but I'm the Stephen that made these promises to you and helped you out. And you go, I get it. Stephen sent you. Even though you know I'm the one who did these things. So you see, you don't bring the principle that far. You understand what I'm saying? So by saying it's Jewish agency, the practice of agency, it makes it so that no matter what the angel of the Lord says, you cannot be convinced he's nothing but an angel. Even if the angel of the Lord said, I am God, I am the one that brought you up out of Egypt, I did all these things, you would still look at the angel of the Lord and say, I get it, you're not God, you're just speaking for God. Even if the angel of the Lord, because what we have in the scriptures is the angel of the Lord actually saying, I am God, I am the one who did X, Y, and Z. And we have people seeing him and saying, I think I should probably be dead because I just saw God. But the principle of agency can't be taken that far when the angel of the Lord is actually saying, I am this person. The principle of agency is supposed to be used for just speaking on someone's behalf. So I show up in court and I use the principle of agency to speak on your behalf and like a lawyer would.
That's how come I read contracts all the time, and you have to put the phrase in there, the vendor's not going to act as an agent for McLeod.
So there's a difference between how the prophets speak and how the angel of the Lord speaks on behalf of God, right? The prophets go, thus saith the Lord, or God will say, tell the people this, and then they come and say, God says this, this, and this. But the angel shows up and says, I say this, or I am this. I am the one who did this.
Sometimes.
Yes, sometimes. So what we will get to is that I'm not convinced that every time the angel of the Lord is used in scriptures, that it's always Jesus showing up. But I am convinced that there are times when we look at the context and look at the way in which the angel of the Lord is speaking and how the angel of the Lord identifies with God and how the angel of the Lord also says, I'm not God. And then the New Testament comes in and speaks about those same places. It's easy for us to say those places are Christophanies. That's where Jesus has shown up in the Old Testament.
What a Christophany is exactly what?
An appearance, so a theophany is an appearance of God. Christophany is an appearance of Christ. And so we have to then distinguish, that we talked about, that the difference between us saying the word is coming as Jesus is showing it as the pre-incarnate word, as the angel of the Lord, because he's not showing up taking on human nature, which is easy for us to say when we're talking about the angel of the Lord. But when we get to the next session, when we talk about when the three people show up to Abraham and Abraham goes to thing, Abraham sees a human, but it's not the same thing as Jesus coming in and taking on human flesh, taking on human nature, bearing our sin and taking it to the cross. That's different from what we'll talk about next time. Kind of set up what will be going on in the next week, because we finished this one. So I think there are times when the angel of the Lord is an angel, and I think there's times when the angel of the Lord is the pre-incarnate word, Jesus appearing in the Old Testament. And I think that when we use the tools and the principles we've shared, we can work to deduce which is which. Because it's important to understand where we see Jesus in the Old Testament, because we're working to find out more and more information about who Jesus is so we can follow him. And he's our Lord, and we want to know more and more about the Lord that we serve, so that we can follow him more faithfully and know him more deeply. And I think for me, that's the purpose of this study that we're doing. We're trying to know who Jesus is in a deeper sense. And we're trying to understand the ways in which God uses the Bible to teach us things, and how I think God has left so many crumbs in the Old Testament that God is saying, go and find, now that you know who Jesus is. See my glory through what I have done. And so for me, when we go over the bronze serpent, I think it's like the fact that God puts that story in there and then it gets referenced later on, it's just so beautiful for us. And it's like God is just weaving this masterpiece. And the Bible is not just a collection of stories and chapters and books into one huge like reference. It's something that is a masterwork that has been put together by God for us to understand who Christ is more deeply, and to see the divine providence of God in the Old Testament, of how there are things that were like, this makes no sense. Why is this there? And it's like, oh my gosh, 1,000 years later, it makes complete sense. How beautiful is that? How beautiful is the fact that the Bible talks about crucifixion before crucifixion is even a thing on the earth? Like, I think those things are just beautiful. And we'll continue going through this. We have a lot to get into. We're doing Christophanies. We'll get into the tabernacle and how that sets us up for Christ and things like that. We'll get into more prophecies. We'll go through the list of types in Hebrews, the Hall of Fame, if you will, in Hebrews. I think that'll be cool. So there's a lot to look forward to, and I look forward to it because I just love seeing what God has put together and laid for us to find. I'm kind of glad not everything is just spelled out for us. We get to go on journeys together.